Francisco Goya is considered one of the last Old Masters and the father of modernism. Old Master referring to any skilled artist working in Europe between the Renaissance and about 1800. Goya's long and successful career began in the 1760s. He is known for his drawings, paintings, tapestries, etchings, and lithographs, with much of his work being done in the style of Romanticism. But he also created work that was surreal and dreamlike. Some of his best work was created for personal reasons and not shown during his lifetime. One of his best paintings was an example of this. It was created in the style of Romanticism and not publicly displayed during his lifetime. The work is considered one of the first modern-day paintings, called The 3rd of May, 1808. The historical background of the painting starts with Napoleon Bonaparte, who rose to power during the French Revolution and continued to rule France during the appropriately named
the Napoleonic Wars, where
various countries fought against him. His biggest threat came from Great Britain, who dominated the seas. Spain had been allied with France, and in 1805 they joined naval forces to attack Britain at the Battle of Trafalgar. The powerful Royal British Navy destroyed both the French and Spanish naval fleets, ending any chance Napoleon had to invade England. His next move was to try and collapse the British economy. He ordered all European countries to stop trading with Britain. This strategy was known as the Continental System. Portugal, though, was Britain's oldest ally in Europe, and declined to join the system.
I must respectfully decline.
The 1807 Treaty of Fontainebleau was signed between France and Spain to conquer and divide Portugal into 3 entities. This kicked off the Peninsular War in November of 1807, when a French army, along with Spanish troops, marched through Spain into Portugal, where they occupied Lisbon. With so many French troops already in Spain, Napoleon decided it was a good time to turn on his ally and take over Spain.
Huge dick move, but very effective.
French troops soon occupied Madrid and forced out the Spanish royal family of Charles IV and his son Ferdinand VII. On the 2nd of May, 1808, crowds of people gathered in front of the royal palace in Madrid to stop the removal of the remaining members of the royal family, who they feared would face execution. French soldiers opened fire on the crowds, and fighting began in the streets of Madrid. Hundreds of people died, and the French eventually took back control of the city. The next day, French troops retaliated by rounding up hundreds of civilians and executing them. After these events, Napoleon appointed his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, as the King of Spain. Most people in Spain rejected the French rule, and fighting continued for the remainder of the war. In 1802, 62-year-old painter Francisco Goya was at the height of his career as first court painter. He had worked for Charles IV painting portraits of the Spanish royal family, up until the French occupation, when he then worked under Joseph Bonaparte. During the war, he did portraits of both French and Spanish generals. It isn't known for sure if he witnessed the events of the 2nd and 3rd of May, but he was witness to many other atrocities during the war. Starting in 1810, he created a series of 82 etchings called The Disasters of War, which highlight these scenes. The etchings include captions, providing Goya's own commentary on the subjects. The Peninsular War ended in 1814, when the Sixth Coalition defeated Napoleon, and Ferdinand VII returned to the throne. Goya was pardoned for having served the French king, and was reinstated as court painter. At Goya's request, the Spanish Provisional Government commissioned 2 paintings that highlighted the events of 1808. The first painting was the 2nd of May, 1808, also called The Charge of the Mamelukes. This painting shows the fighting between Mameluke cavalry members who served Napoleon and the Spanish people during the uprising. The painting is chaotic, depicting violence everywhere on both sides. Soldiers and horses fill the canvas, with guns and swords being pointed in every direction. Dead bodies are seen all over the ground, surrounded in blood. The body of a Mameluke soldier in red falling off of his white horse seems to be the central figure, as it creates a high contrast. Red, brown, and pink colors dominate the canvas. It is a fairly bright and colorful piece compared to the companion painting, the 3rd of May, 1808, which was also completed in 1814. The 3rd of May, 1808 is a nighttime exterior scene based on the actual historical event where French soldiers rounded up and executed Spanish civilians, but is dramatized for effect. A man is seen on the left side of the painting with outstretched arms, almost glowing in his white shirt and yellow pants. He is the brightest part of the painting, and viewers' eyes are immediately drawn to him. The same colors are also seen in the square lantern, which is the main light source in the scene and creates a strong contrast between light and dark. The light illuminates the hill in the background, and along with the shadow on the ground, they create lines that guide our eyes to the firing squad on the right side of the screen. The soldiers have their rifles pointed at the Spanish civilians, which guide our eyes right back to the men on the left. The man in the white shirt looks on in fear, with eyes wide, eyebrows raised up, and head tilted to the side. Next to him stands another terrified man, and a monk with his hands together in prayer. Behind them, other men cower in fear, with one covering his eyes. Next to this group, a line of people is also seen, waiting in horror for their turn to be executed. Similarly, they have their heads down, and the man in front covers his eyes. Below this, a pile of dead and bloody bodies are seen on the ground, a reminder of these people's fate. The dead man directly below the man in white has his arms similarly outstretched, almost creating a before and after image. In contrast to the expressive and fearful appearance of the civilians, the soldiers have their backs turned to the viewer, so we are unable to read their facial expressions. They are seen as emotionless and stand in an identical pose with their heads pointed down. They are like robots in a straight line, almost connected. The line of soldiers fades off into the distance, possibly suggesting that there is no end to the soldiers, or to war. On the opposite side of the painting, the same thing happens. Civilians fade into the background, and almost appear as shadows on the hillside. In the distant background, we see a town. Being so far back, the brushstrokes here are almost gestural. More figures are seen with torches between the town and the foreground. Possibly more victims for the firing squad, although they aren't given much detail. The sky is painted pure black and makes up almost a third of the canvas, adding to the drama. Looking again at the central figure, his pose resembles that of Christ on the cross. This idea is reinforced by a piercing on his right hand, a reference to stigmata, the crucifixion marks of Christ. This comparison is a suggestion that the man and the others surrounding him are martyrs, innocent victims in their fight against tyranny. The colors that Goya uses are primarily warm and earthy, with a lot of black scattered around. The bright red blood on the ground stands out, but is balanced out by shades of orange seen around the painting. The complementary green of the monk's pants also stand out, and are balanced out by some cooler greenish hues. The scene captures a very brief moment in time, only lasting for a few seconds, and Goya's technique matches this sense of urgency. He uses large, loose brushstrokes in much of the painting. The hill in the background is full of thick brushstrokes that give it a clear texture. Looking closely at the soldiers, this brushwork is noticeably smoother than most of the painting, and we don't see that human touch of the artist's brush, reinforcing their machine-like appearance. Goya's work as court painter continued until he and many of his friends were exiled by the cruel and oppressive leader, Ferdinand VII. The 2nd and 3rd of May paintings were not well received by the Regency who commissioned them. They were displayed inside of the royal palace until being given to the Museo del Prado, where they sat in storage for more than 40 years, finally being exhibited in 1868 after the museum was nationalized. At the time, the painting was unlike typical depictions of war, where triumphant heroes faced a courageous and glamorous death without any gore. Goya's painting showed the bloody reality and cowardly aspects of war. Today, the 3rd of May 1808 is recognized as one of the world's first modern paintings due to its realistic depiction of war. Created long before photographs and video of war saturated the media, it is a powerful anti-war statement that has inspired many artists. Edouard Manet was the first to show influences of the painting with his work Execution of Emperor Maximilian. Pablo Picasso used an even more direct influence.
He definitely stole it.
With his 1951 painting Massacre in Korea, and in his painting Guernica, which has been called a modern depiction of the painting. I know I've talked a lot about this painting, so what are your thoughts? Does this work deserve the praise that it gets? And how does it make you feel? Any thoughts you have on this painting or the artist, please let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please support this channel by liking and subscribing.